part of the problem is that the money supply has become delinked from the kind of reality on the ground in a way that makes it harder than ever to say, like, well, I did the right thing and now I have to pay because someone else did the wrong thing. There's some truth to that, but the looming difficulty, the looming problem is that the full faith and credit of the American people in the value of the dollar is being eroded, is in danger of being destroyed because of modern monetary policy, because of this sort of revolving door between the government and the Fed. It's just bad stuff. And 2008, and ultimately someone has to figure out how to keep the wheels on the wagon. But this system has been unraveling for a long time. There does not seem to be a fix anywhere in sight. And the solution, the kludge has been to just print more money, a lot more money, by some measures, more money than had ever been in circulation until printer.
Welcome to the Wiggin Sessions. I'm Addison Wiggin. I have with me today James Poulos from the Claremont Institute. I'm going to start out by asking about James' new book, Human Forever. And I want to know what your work with the Claremont Institute entails and how you come about talking about human forever. Has something to do with artificial intelligence and the way social media is changing our culture. So welcome, James. Let's get started. And why don't you get going and talk about the Claremont Institute, please?
Sure. So it's a pleasure to be with you. Claremont Institute's been around for about 40 years. It's kind of like a think tank. It also teaches. We got fellowships. And publishes. One of the two publications is The American Mind. That's the one that I co-founded, and I'm now editor of that publication. It's pretty young, been around since I think about 2018. A lot of space to play in. The new media landscape has been kind of whack for a long time, and obviously a lot of changing pieces, changing of the guard politically since 2016, even a little bit earlier. So it's been an exciting time to be a part of that ferment and to sort of play a role in staking out some new ways of sort of rethinking the political economy, cultural politics, and of course technology. So I'm the guy at Claremont who sort of became the most captivated, I guess, by trying to tease out what's been going on with the development of technology, the influence of technology, not just on something like partisan politics, but really at the deepest level on the nature of the American regime. The form of governance that has been kind of emerging, partly as a result of people's opinions, of course, or agendas. But even more so a result of just like the medium of digital technology itself, like the power and authority, the framework, the environment of this communications technology. And so, I've written some essays here and there, a sabbatical going, I guess in summer of last year during the month of July. Of course, did a lot of prep work for writing the book, but really just kind of sat down and cranked something out that I wanted to be timely, but that would stand the test of time. And so far, although the acceleration continues, feel pretty good about what's in the box on the book and the role that it's played in kind of pushing that conversation forward.
So one of the things in your bio, so I'm just getting to know you myself, but you talk about working with brands and corporations, enterprises, and the intersection of how people are thinking about new media, new technology, and new. I'm assuming like AI and social media. So there's like an intersection going on, and you talk about that in your book.
Yeah, it's a rapidly unfolding landscape. I mean, I think we've all seen sometimes up close, big new media properties really fall flat on their face over the past 10 years. A lot of churn, a lot of corporations sort of spending big bucks on properties that end up losing money. many sad tales. I've seen whole newsrooms sort of fired Christmas week, told that it's been real, but it's time to say bye-bye. So, much like music, I think journalism is kind of one of the first places where the sweep and the depth of impact created not just by people trying to game out the system, but by the nature of digital technology itself, it's first felt. And so, it's in that sense, it's kind of been not so surprising, I think, that politics has been one zone where media properties have managed to do well. Part of that, I think, is because the spectacle of these super machines taking control of so much of our lives, asserting a kind of dominance over the world that no one person or group of people can really have anymore. That has sent people running away from kind of normie expectations, normie fantasies, normie plans, towards something that they feel like is authoritative enough or awesome enough to restore for them a kind of sense that, like, well, hey, maybe we deserve to be in charge of these machines after all. Maybe we don't need to just kind of await our robot overlords. And one of those things for a lot of people can be ideology, and especially religion. And I think, we've seen a kind of return to a religious sensibility at home and abroad, as people are sort of looking for, something compelling that makes them think like, yes, it's actually good news to be human. Human beings are important. Human beings have some sort of authority. Something about us is in spite of it all, kind of bigger, better, truer, more beautiful than what the machines have to offer. And all those kinds of big questions, they touch on politics, they touch on the nature of what regime we want to live in, what kind of regime we're stuck with or should live in. And so it's been logical in that sense to see media properties do well when they're kind of thrown into that mix. A lot of that stuff had to do, obviously, with kind of the Trump era, as it was really the first chance for a lot of people to crack open these big questions in a context of national politics. But it's hard to keep up. I mean, you just saw, New York Times sort of, gleefully maybe reporting on Washington Post, unable to sort of meet those numbers that they had at the peak of Trumpomania. Maybe it'll come back. I'm not 100% sure about that. And so even the big media properties are sort of trying to figure out how to deal. And I think, it hasn't been surprising in that sense to see journalism, or what journalism has become, sort of morph into something where wokeness has become very prominent, where people have this kind of theological commitment to the big spiritual concepts in that box. This is something that surplus elites can do. If you're sort of good with words and you kind of high functioning abstract thinker or whatever, what are you able to what kind of role are you able to slide into? And that kind of, priestly class is that kind of role. And I think you're increasingly seeing that. This is, just a sociological sort of observation, increasingly seeing that on the left and on the right, where people have been historically more comfortable with that kind of thing. And so, all these things are a powerful ferment. A lot of them people, ordinary people feel them coming to a head in their own personal lives. Contributing, to polarization and to the temperature in the national conversation going up, but also to a much more kind of internal sort of gut check, dark night of the soul during COVID. People have really been forced to confront the magnitude of the changes we're experiencing, the role of technology in those experiences, and sort of reassessing what the value or the purpose of their humanity is, of their human being. Why should they bother sort of suffering in the way that human beings have always suffered? They're big questions. It's appropriate for media properties to dive into that, but I do think that it's time for some fresh brands to come in and kind of present things to people in a newly compelling way. So I was proud of getting American Mind up and running, and really proud of Return, which is it's a membership community with an online and print publication attached. We're all about flourishing in a human way at the digital frontier. That just launched in March, so early days, but the response has been really good, and I think it fills a role that's up for grabs right now on the scene.
I'm a little bit curious about the term that you used, surplus elites. What do you mean by that? That sounds like a revolutionary idea.
Maybe it is, and I guess it depends on what end of the stick you're on. Obviously, there's a lot of agita right now over the student debt situation.
Yeah. I mean, we just went through that, right? Like
Yeah.
forgiving debt for a certain segment of society when there's a lot of people that didn't benefit from that.
They didn't benefit, and personal responsibility is something that we need more of. People are unwilling to consider. This is just one of Marshall McLuhan's better quotes. There's a deep-seated repugnance in the human breast for taking responsibility, for understanding the processes in which we are involved. He said that would involve much too much responsibility. So people are uncomfortable looking in that box. When you look in there, what do you see? You don't just see sort of like bad decisions in the aggregate. You see, I think, students and their parents were sold a political economy which technological advancement has been destroying and which continues to destroy. Yeah, sure, there are some elites who probably thought that it would be not so bad if they engineered a new kind of social system and let the chips fall where they may. There are always sort of bad apples and corrupt people at all levels of society. Wouldn't be surprising to find them at the upper echelon. But we do need to focus on the reality that like the people in charge sort of unleashed this technology on the world, didn't really quite do what they expected it to do. And who's left holding the bag as the result of that? We can ask important questions about why these loans are not dischargeable in bankruptcy, and how much sort of a president trying to rewrite contracts without congressional involvement is sort of like bad. I mean, this is messy, and it's messy for some real reasons. But I think if we zoom out, what we can see is there are a lot of folks who worked really hard and thought that they did everything right to rise in the ranks out of the rat race into a sort of more rarefied air of being knowledge workers. And suddenly, knowledge work ain't what it used to be. And the whole kind of socioeconomic arrangement that was predicated on that class having kind of a comfortable, stable, normal life, that's been blown up. And so these looming questions hanging over people in the generations most affected by that kind of character arc, they're serious questions. They're radical questions. I think to date, it's the established regime, or the established ruling class, has not done a very good job of answering those questions and continues to struggle.
So just to be clear, you think that the forgiving of 10,000 or 20,000, depending on what category you fit in, of student debt is well, one of the things that is being said is that it contributes to inflation, but the other thing is that it creates a moral conundrum for people that entered into either a contract to pay for student debt, or they chose not to, and now they're being taxed to be able to pay for that. I think I may be reading into what you're saying, but I would like to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, a couple things. Part of the problem is that the money supply has become delinked from the kind of reality on the ground in a way that makes it harder than ever to say, like, well, I did the right thing and now I have to pay because someone else did the wrong thing. There's some truth to that, but the looming difficulty, the looming problem is that the full faith and credit of the American people in the value of the dollar is being eroded, is in danger of being destroyed because of modern monetary policy, because of this sort of revolving door between the government and the Fed. It's just bad stuff. And yeah, 2008, and ultimately someone has to figure out how to keep the wheels on the wagon. But this system has been unraveling for a long time. There does not seem to be a fix anywhere in sight. And the solution, the kludge has been to just print more money, a lot more money, by some measures, more money than had ever been in circulation until printer go burr. And so when that's kind of the context in which this is unfolding, it gets really squirrely really fast. And part of that is affecting the rule of law in a negative way. If a president can wave the magic wand like this, what else can they wave the magic wand on? It raises some fundamental questions about what's left of our constitutional form of government. Congress is being left out in the cold, which is, I think, a mistake. You got to make sure that the basic principles of contract are observed and upheld. At the same time, loans should be dischargeable in bankruptcy. Alexis de Tocqueville was very clear in Democracy in America that the reason why the U.S. didn't have debtor prisons and wasn't spending all its time chasing down debtors like in the old world was because Americans could start over. They could start fresh, and there's something built into the rule of law, into the legal system, that allowed them to, just BR their way out if they took risks that didn't pan out. This isn't exactly comparable to, starting a business and the business doesn't work out for reasons that are kind of out of your hands. We have created a monster of a financial system, and we have financialized much of the economy and much of the culture as a result. And so this is about a lot more than just, sort of the bad debts that are kind of never really going to go away. You just keep getting passed back and forth between, government lenders and private lenders and government-backed private lenders. And it's a shell game. And it's part of the same shell game that's been going on for a long time with financialization. So I understand the frustrations of students. I understand the frustrations of folks at the top of finance who do want to do the right thing, don't want to oversee the meltdown of the financial system. But someone, some responsibility does have to be taken. Hopefully, everyone can take a share, and there is going to be some pain. And I think hearing the Fed say that kind of thing spooks markets and everything. But people have to understand, this is a game of musical chairs that has to come to an end. And the fundamental reforms that have to take place at the level of the financial system itself, at the level of Congress sort of sacking up and not trying to outsource all of its responsibilities to the executive branch, to the administrative agencies. It's real, it's important. And I think, despite the fact that crypto and Bitcoin have really taken a hit recently, I think that's why the story is definitely not over, and they'll probably come roaring back sooner rather than later.
So let's talk about your book, Human Forever. You're saying that the fundamental ideas that were put in place with the Constitution and the way that we've run the political society for many years, it's kind of a blip on human society, but many years in our own recollection, that those are good ideas to follow, even if we adapt new technologies and new ideas about the way society operates. I'm kind of putting words in your mouth, but that's part of the reason I want to talk to you, is I want to have your opinion on what it is that we should be doing moving forward. We have all these debates about save democracy and like Trump this and Pelosi that, whatever. Like, what do we do as individuals as we move forward in our own lives? Like, how are you thinking about that? And I know that was a central part of the way that you approach the book.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think, really the most important thing is for those of us who have young children to prepare them in the right way to become adults in this world. The uncertainty level in some respects is very high. In other respects, it seems like a pretty safe bet that this genie is not going to go back into the bottle. And so, kids need to be prepared in a way that gives them the kinds of rites of passage that human beings have always had in order to mature into fully functioning adult human beings, capable of taking responsibility, taking risk, and capable of recognizing at a soul level that being human being is good. It is a good gift. Warts and all, yes, we're not going to be perfect, but we're not going to be gods, and we're not going to be turned into beasts. We're kind of stuck with our humanity, and we have to confront the problems that we have created or inherited, and solve them as human beings. And for the first time, kids are being raised in a milieu where the prospect of using technology to fundamentally alter or even destroy or replace our humanity is thinkable. It's on the table. I know this is courting controversy, but when you see what is going on with gender reassignment surgery and all that sort of thing, people are not magically transforming from male to female or vice versa. And I think we all know this. They're turning into a certain kind of cyborg, and they're using sex as a kind of site where technology can make dramatic changes in the most fundamental kind of way to our appearance and our identity. And that is just kind of the tip of the spear, I think, for the response. And I think it's a spiritual response to the domination of technology in our life by saying, like, well, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of leave our humanity behind. Being human's bad news. We're really flawed. We're ugly. We're stupid. Our machines are so much better. So, if you can't beat them, join them. And there's no more fundamental place to start in terms of identity than with sex. So we're gonna begin this project with these kinds of interventions and go from there. I think a lot of folks understand that at root is what's going on. And I think the damage being done to children is considerable. It really is. I know that this is, bordering on speech that is becoming, quasi or sometimes officially impermissible. But we have to think carefully about exactly what it is that we're doing to prepare our children to become functioning human adults in this world. And if people think that it's not possible, then we're going to continue to see people do things to their children, radical things, ultimately deliberately designed to move them out of their human being and into something else.
So let's talk about the phrase or the title that you gave the book, Human Forever. Like, let's move further in that direction. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So what I mean is our humanity is good. It's a gift. We should keep it. We're stuck with it. Trying to escape our humanity, trying to deny our humanity, trying to manufacture or simulate something that is not humanity, which we could disappear into in some way. Bad idea, not going to work. The graft will not take. And those who believe otherwise are in for a very hard landing. There will be tears. There will be a lot of pain and suffering. I mean, the meme that makes the rounds on the internet is sort of Peter Griffin sitting there in his chair, laughing and uttering the words of Tesla. I think that you will live to see man-made horrors beyond your imagination. That's happening. It's already happening. And the way to stop that is to remember what it is to be human, that we are incarnate, ensouled, encultured beings that stand in a special relationship ultimately to God. And there's no way to kind of crack into this without getting into theological territory. I know there are a lot of smart people right now, including in tech, who are like, no, reason can explain everything. It's time to leave this barbarism of theological stuff behind. And then I think of like Bertrand Russell and how he, was making these arguments what is now long ago, religion is so silly. And that's why I spend all day sort of contemplating the pure austerity of mathematics, which gives me the sort of the most ennobled and perfect feeling that a human being can have. And it's like, well, bro, you are making a god out of math. So, as Bob Dylan said, you got to serve somebody, you got to worship someone or something. And one of the most important things for us to kind of bring us back to reality, to remember who we are, is that digital technology raises these fundamental questions that historically have only been answerable in a theological way. That's coming back. It's not going to be sort of rationalism forever. It's not going to be materialism forever. Obviously, reason plays a role in our human equipment. Obviously, we live in an at least partially material world. That's definitely not going to change, doesn't need to change, shouldn't see it as bad news. But the theological stuff is coming back. I think you see it everywhere you go. And that's a part of remembering, why we should bother, why we should have kids, why we should have sex, why we should date, why we should, get out of bed in the morning, stuff that, used to be taken very much for granted. And you look at what's going on in Japan, South Korea, the birth rates are plummeting. It's not just there, but you can kind of see this dystopian future emerging out of the soup, where people just kind of resign themselves to the idea that that humanity is obsolete. It was never really that good anyway. Very sad stuff, and that points in the direction of one of the more obscure philosophers who I think will probably gain some more notice in the years to come, a guy by the name of Zaf. He referred to something he called the sacrament of the last Messiah. And his idea was basically people get too crazy the smarter that they get. And finally, they get so crazy that they conclude that that intelligence needs to stop increasing. And the way to do that is by ending human life. So stop reproducing, stop doing much of anything. You can see sort of weird echoes of this in these World Economic Forum memes that come out about owning nothing and being happy, just kind of vanishing into the metaverse, whatever. These impulses have deep roots. This kind of nihilism, it has deep roots, and the reckoning that is being caused by our confrontation with the mastery of our lives by our own devices. That's the kind of confrontation that should remind us very forcefully that our humanity is only going to occur to us and be open to experience for us as something of deep, transcendent, ultimate value if we see it through a theological lens.
So when the subtitle of the book is the confrontation with the spiritual war, that's what you're talking about.
The digital politics of spiritual war.
Yeah. So let's break that down. So the digital politics, that's like social media and the way that that we communicate over TV and social media and online, is at odds with what we know is sort of like the historical I would just say freedom of the Western idea of the way that we live our lives. Like you're able to determine your own life and move forward, taking care of your family, and having a fulfilling life. If I understand you correctly, you feel that's at odds with the way that the digital world is developing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, it's become very easy now to bag on social media. I mean, everyone knows sort of why it sucks, especially with the advent of TikTok. It's not that TikTok is sort of especially evil or whatever, but it is a more advanced form of social media in terms of the technology and the sophistication of the code of the algorithms and how they interrelate with us. But we know that it's not a substitute for real life. It can be a supplement, sure. And then there are these political questions, like there are things that you can and can't say, and who gets to decide, and are they sort of playing a role that ought to belong to governments, not to private entities, and at the same time, aren't those entities sort of obliged for their very existence to government research and development? And the line between public and private in that sense, it is blurring away. And the defenders of big tech oftentimes shamelessly avail themselves of both sides of the dynamic in order to make their political arguments. Oh, you can't do antitrust. It's a national security risk. So these things are part of the government. Well, no, it's the free market, and you can't mess with that either. You can't regulate the free market. So they try to have it both ways, and I think oftentimes they succeed at having it both ways. And this is a problem that both parties cannot get away from, and they're going to have to find some way to deal with.
All right, so
does it best is probably going to get some advantages. But there's a larger context too, and I'll just quickly touch on it. You look at every major country in the world that is sort of the heir or the guardian of a civilization. I think of like China, India, Russia, Israel, the U.S., a few others in Europe. To the extent that they have real digital power, that they're digital power players. I think it's clear to see that there's a powerful trend where the elites in these countries are moving quickly to reestablish their sovereignty over the digital technology within their territory by sort of rejiggering their regime in a more theological direction. You look at what's going on in China. They're trying to make their bots Taoist. You look at what's going on in Russia. They built a huge military cathedral outside of Moscow just a few years ago. They're very serious about inaugurating a new, closer relationship between the military and the church. And, military technology is a huge part of that. And then in the U.S., we're not supposed to have an established religion. So it's a little trickier for us. It's messier. It's a lot more fighting. I think, one part of what's heightened the stakes so much is, there's been a tradition in Protestant America of sort of flirting with that established church idea, and in some ways, the wokies have become the heirs of that. Just look at the way that they've really taken over the universities. A lot of those universities were, in certain respects, as close as we got to having that established church. So there's a reason why all of this kind of religious stuff is starting to happen around the world, and the answer is ruling classes and elites are scrambling to find the ground where they can reassert their sovereignty in the digital age, and that opens up all kinds of political questions.
Yeah. So how do you? This is the question I was going to ask. How do you foresee that playing out? That's part of what we would want to ask as viewers of what you're saying, is like, how does that play out over? There's a lot of legislation that would have to happen. There's a lot of discussion about democracy, things that people are already worried about. How do you see that playing out in the very near future, but also over the next decade? I feel like, and just having read your work, that you're very passionate about preserving free speech and allowing people to kind of figure it out for themselves. But do we have the infrastructure? Do we have the institutions that can support that?
Yeah, that's a serious question. In the very near term, free speech is important. It's sitting there in the First Amendment. But free speech is really, its value converges on zero when there's no free association. And I think free association has become the frontier of the rule of law right now. And I think that, a lot of people recognize that we are already in a certain kind of...
I want to stop you very quickly just to define free association, because I think that's an important term that you're bringing up. And I actually get criticized regularly for stopping guests and trying to define terms, but I think that's important. What do you mean by free association? Because I think that's an important thing.
It's just the unimpeded ability of groups of people to form on their own terms, to form and communicate privately, but also openly. And that's become, I get it. It's become a moderation problem, and people across the political spectrum are sort of freaking out that, extremists, people who disagree with me extremely, are finding each other on the internet and hanging out, and this is terrible. And well, yeah, sure, yes, it puts certain strains on our habits and customs politically. There's no question about that. But the fix for that is not to blow up free association. Oh my God, we've become so irresponsible and crazy that we don't deserve to have these toys anymore. I mean, free association, it's not a toy. It is a natural right, I would say. And if that goes away, then our form of government goes away. Our constitutionally guaranteed form of government goes away. People in the United States must play a role in determining how digital technology will be used and structured, and how the kind of reconstituted American framework that is going to have to be built as the present system continues to crumble. I don't think there's any doubt really that it is crumbling, and that those in charge are sort of fumbling, trying to figure out what to do about it. There's going to be a new dispensation, and the American people need to be right at the heart of making determinations about what it's going to be. Free association is key to that. That's why Bitcoin is really important. And I recognize that there are some folks out there who, if pushed, they'll say well, look, maybe social credit system isn't the best idea, but China's already doing it, and we kind of have to get with the program a little bit. Otherwise, we're going to be at a disadvantage. And you look at the trend lines, and Americans are sort of getting worse. And it's not my first choice, they might say, but it's something that we have to do anyway. I don't think that's right. I recognize that our institutions are looking pretty shaky. I recognize that infrastructure is bad. I recognize that industry is struggling, and that the sort of forced transition to new ways of life that digital technology is creating for us is going to be painful. That is all the more reason why, if we want to remain recognizably American, we really have to make sure that the American people themselves are doing what it is that they have always done to keep America, America. I'm talking like this is a large commercial republic. It's still kind of the only large commercial republic out there. And there are certain habits, deep-seated practices, mores, and legal structures that need to be in place in order for a people to conduct themselves in a way that keeps a large commercial republic going. And if all technological power is concentrated in a legal and spiritual way in the hands of a tiny elite that makes invasive choices about the most intimate details of people's lives, you can kiss that large commercial republic goodbye. And once that is gone, then it's all bets are off as to what America becomes. I don't think that's a world we want to go to. I think we have a patriotic duty to make sure we don't go to that world. And it's time to be adult about it and to just sit down and start sorting through this stuff, making legislation that works, pushing power downward, to the states and to communities, and making people, take some active responsibility for the way that they restructure their lives digitally, both as private citizens and as members of broader communities, and ultimately as Americans.
Well, the way that you phrase that, you sound very optimistic about our ability to absorb the impact of new technology in our lives. We're talking now on Zoom. That was a big thing that happened during the pandemic, and everyone's adapting to a new way of conducting their daily affairs. You sound optimistic about our ability to continue forward without sort of the old school office-based businesses that we've run forever. So my question is, what is the source of your optimism? It sounds spiritual to me in a way, but also it sounds like you just feel like we're smart enough to figure this out without dealing with politics as a negative source. So that's kind of a big question, but what I'm saying is, what is the source of your optimism? It sounds like you're optimistic about our ability to move forward.
Well, I think the alternatives are a lot worse. You look around the world, and the U.S. has its problems, and in some ways we're just getting started. But things are considerably worse abroad. It's not like there's some other country that's just really nailing it, and we kind of enviously sit on the sidelines wishing. I mean, you can think back to like Thomas Friedman writing his infamous New York Times column. If only we were China for a day, we would experience all this efficiency, and it would be so amazing. And nobody's really saying that. I mean, China's got serious, profound problems of its own: demographic problems, economic, financial problems. In some ways, the people of China are more belligerent and radical than the regime itself. Russia's obviously got a really tough lift. Africa's got problems. It's everywhere you look. People are really struggling. You look at what's going on with energy in Europe. Look at population, birth rates, testosterone. I mean, all the indicators are really starting to look really bad. And the dollar, in spite of it all, is still the world's reserve currency. And, we can complain about the dollar. And, there's lots of reasons to complain about that. But at the end of the day, Americans need to recognize that even if things get real bad, it's still going to probably be better here than it is in other places. And the way that Americans decide and lock in systems of governance in a digital age that keep us America and keep us human, that is going to have a profound and perhaps even decisive influence on what happens around the rest of the world. If we blow this, it's not like there's going to be some other place that we can run to. We can't all sort of move to Hawaii or the Caribbean or disappear into the metaverse and expect that like the bad world will just sort of screw itself over and we will be able to eke out a quiet and happy existence eating, soy burgers in paradise or whatever. That is not what is going to happen. The fight for the future of our humanity is taking place here first. And we owe it to ourselves and one another and our children to get it right. And we still have a sort of American privilege, so the good fortune of our geographical location and various other advantages that we've had. We got to put it to use. There's a time to spend that capital, and that time is now. And so I am optimistic that people recognize this. You wouldn't know it from the news, but even right now, despite all the craziness, a majority of Americans are basically patriotic. They like their country. They are basically favorably disposed toward technological innovation that comes out of the United States. Nobody says, wow, China should really be doing all this. Leave us out of it. We want to be Amish. That's not the majority opinion. And a majority of Americans are still self-identified Christians. That is a powerful constituency. And there's a lot of not just smarts, but sort of common sense and deep, soulful grounding and humility and a combination of willingness to take risk and a willingness to understand that prudence is a virtue. All that stuff is at play. A tradition of strong families, a tradition of hard work, really basic bread and butter stuff. Yeah, we have our problems, diabetes or whatever, people on disability. Obviously, it's so easy to point out all the bad stuff and laugh at it, but we have to remember that this is all playing out in the context of, there's still a lot of Americans who basically have their heads on straight. They're concerned about what's going on. They don't always know what to do about technology. Give them the tools. Build institutions on Bitcoin. It's sitting there. The price is right. It's a powerful technology. And you can, right now, it's matured to a level where you can build businesses on it. I published my book, Human Forever, on chain. It's for sale in Bitcoin. This, I did NFTs, but they weren't just cartoons. They were limited edition, numbered and signed copies of the book, sold out of them in 25 hours, made more money in a day than a lot of authors make, with their advances on books that take them, maybe a year, 2, 3 to get published. It's just one example of how, we can sidestep broken systems, build things that are totally compatible and consistent in their DNA with standard operating procedure for Americans. We can build those on digital foundations, create new markets, create new value, create new institutions that serve us rather than making us serve them.
So let's just to kind of put a package on the whole thing. Let's talk a little bit about the Claremont Institute and also your involvement, and then round out with your book, because I think people will be engaged by what we're talking about right now, and they're going to want to know more. So how do we do that?
So let's see. I'll cough up all the URLs and stuff. American Mind is at americanmind.org. I'm on Twitter at James Poulos. The book is on Canonic. That's canonic.xyz. And you can sort of read more information about the book at humanforever.us. That's humanforever.us. What else can I tell you? Look, Claremont Institute, since its beginning, it sort of grew out of the work of one of America's foremost political philosophers, Harry Jaffa, and Jaffa's work on the importance of natural right to the founding of America and the nature of America's regime. He was right, and it's really important. We have a complement of attributes and characteristics as human beings that we did not come up with ourselves. It was given to us. And although that can be complicated, in some ways it's very simple. This is a gift that we do not just benefit from using and partaking of our humanity, but we have a certain kind of divine and natural entitlement to employing our complement for the betterment of our human flourishing in a way that is consistent with the nature of our existence. This is all kind of an intellectual way of saying that it's good that we're here. It's good to be who we are. That it's worth taking responsibility for the challenges that are entailed, and we need to recognize that there's no sort of leveraging ourselves out of the human condition into some kind of post-human perfection or purity. And that requires us to get up every day and do the work of kind of, rebuilding and building and rebuilding our inhabited and lived in world every day. It's not about reinventing the wheel. It's not about sort of changing the world every day. Changing the world means altering the life and the existence, the identity of every person on the planet. That is something that I think is a dream that the triumph of digital technology has ultimately eclipsed. We've got to accept the fact that there are going to be fundamentally different wagers about how to live best under digital conditions. And the place to begin is not by sort of chasing strangers around the world, trying to make them more like us, but focusing on, we are human beings and we better get good at it. And if we don't do it, we're going to be in a sorry state, just kind of following whatever weird commandments our super intelligent machines have in store for us.
So what would you say is the concluding thought of your book? I'm curious, after having this conversation, like having thought about it deeply and then also writing about it, what would be like the one sentence that you would give to people?
I think the one sentence is that we need good people who are spiritually strong enough not to freak out over what it is that we've done to ourselves. We need them at the top, and we need them in ordinary life too. And operators are standing by. Like, these positions are open. It is a buyer's market. People can step up and find a way of making a difference. The institutions are in place. The technology is in place. I know it's oftentimes seems like a weird combination of sort of too much chaos and too much order at the same time. Do not be deterred. Do not be psyched out. Do not get confused. If enough of us kind of remember who we are and put one foot in front of the other, find each other, and do what Americans have always done, which is associate freely and build institutions that work under the circumstances, I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah. So just to put a cap on it, you feel like the technology that we've developed would give us the opportunity to advance the ideas that we believe gave us freedom and prosperity to begin with.
If ordinary people do not get their hands dirty, regular people do not get familiar with this technology, and you don't have to become an expert. You don't have to become a blue check. You don't have to have 3 graduate degrees. Just like what I was talking about with the book, things are ready where a little bit of learning, even as little as maybe like in some cases 15 minutes, to like get that Bitcoin wallet, start playing around, start figuring out, where the marketplaces are. There are ways that ordinary people can work together to build technological arrangements that they control, and where they're not, taking orders from faraway strangers, using sort of robotic intermediaries to make them part of this swarm of data, which is going to be the default unless Americans take that one step in a slightly scary direction and have a little bit of confidence in themselves.
All right. So one last question. You refer to Americans as being the most equipped to deal with the innovation that's going on digitally, and you call it the digital war, I think or a spiritual war is what you said. But it's not just Americans, like Europeans are going through the same thing. And it's not just the technology is happening regardless of where you're from. So yeah. It's a big idea. It's bigger than just being an American dealing with our constitutional roots.
100%. I think our advantage here is that we have not experienced a kind of comprehensive cultural disenchantment that almost every other sort of major power in the world has undergone, whether it was, the sort of post-colonial moment in the third world, or the kind of Europe's turn against centuries of its history, really this kind of like collective self-loathing, or sense of guilt, or a sense that like we would be better off if our ancestors had never existed, kind of thing. Russia obviously went through just sort of unspeakable torture, really, as a people. The Chinese, whether under Mao, just really the kinds of devastating, soul deep, forced transformations. And Americans haven't really gone through that. And what we're going through now is a little bit of a tiny taste of that, where people are starting to think like, oh my God, it seems like America doesn't work in the digital age. It seems like other countries are doing better, or somehow like this technology better comports with some kind of despotism or whatever. I think that it's understandable that we're freaking out, because we created these machines and we thought that they would just turn the world into America, basically. And that's not what happened. And that's what our elites prepared us for. And they were wrong, and they didn't expect it. And they're supposed to be our master predictors. And they built the machines that are supposed to be able to predict stuff better. Hillary Clinton was sitting there at 99% probability for becoming president. And obviously that didn't happen. And so I get it. I understand why people are totally sort of spooked and psyched out. Take a breath, look around, remember who you are. Americans do have advantages. And one of them is, despite the rise in a sort of, culture of self-loathing, we still have a lot to be grateful for. We still have a lot to be proud of. And these are resources that we need and that we can rely on to make this transition in a way that's going to be a lot rockier for others.
All right. James, thank you.
Real pleasure.
Human forever. That's a pretty bold statement. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
All right.
Cheers.